They say she doesn't care, that if she's gone quiet, it's because she's already moved on. You're told to stop thinking, stop feeling, and simply let go. But what if the story is more complicated than that? What if the silence you're hearing isn't the sound of closure, but the hum of strategy? What if her distance isn't absence, but attention in disguise? She may not be speaking, but that doesn't mean she's not listening. She may not be reaching out, but that doesn't mean she's not watching. Every moment you hesitate, every flicker of uncertainty, she registers it, not to understand you, but to assess her control over you. Because in the subtle warfare of modern attraction, silence can be a form of surveillance. She's not retreating to heal, she's retreating to study. She wants to know if you'll revert, if you'll collapse into that familiar rhythm of self-doubt, of proving yourself, of chasing. She's not looking to reconnect. She's looking to confirm that you're still orbiting her, that your identity still hinges on her approval. And if you take the bait, if you reach out, explain, apologize, she exhales. Not out of compassion, but out of quiet satisfaction. Because that tells her one thing: she still holds the frame, and you're still playing her game. But what if you didn't respond this time? What if instead of fighting to keep her, you chose something infinitely more powerful? You chose stillness. Not passivity, but presence. Not ignoring her, but choosing yourself. That's where this begins. The day you stop trying to win her back and start reclaiming your autonomy. Because here's the brutal truth. The second you react, you concede the frame. You become predictable. And in this world, power belongs to the one who stays composed. The one who lets silence become a mirror, not a weakness. In Stoic thought, Epictetus said, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond." In modern relationships, this quote isn't a metaphor, it's a survival strategy. She pulls away. She stops sending those morning messages. She leaves your texts hanging for hours. But you notice something peculiar. She still watches your stories. She still surfaces subtly. It's not because she forgot. It's because she's testing. Like a chess player pausing mid-move, she wants to see if you flinch. And if you do, she's confirmed what she suspected, that you haven't detached, that you're still caught in the loop of proving, pleasing, and pleading. Most men fail here. They spiral into overanalysis. They retrace every message, looking for the invisible line they might have crossed. They panic. They text again. They send the double message. They apologize for a tone, for a delay, for breathing too loudly. And in doing so, they shrink themselves. Because a woman doesn't lose interest when you hurt her. She loses interest when you reveal that her attention is your oxygen, that, without her validation, your sense of self collapses. There's a deeper layer here, one rooted in Jungian psychology. When a man seeks external affirmation to complete himself, he's not relating to the woman. He's relating to the projection of his anima, the inner feminine that he's disowned. He chases her not because of who she is, but because of what she symbolizes. Emotional completion, approval, wholeness. That's the trap. And once she realizes you've fallen into it, the game shifts. She starts to pull away, not because she's angry, but because the mystery is gone. You've collapsed your masculine polarity into emotional dependency. And dependency doesn't magnetize, it repels. But something fascinating happens when you don't chase, when you don't explain, when you simply go silent, not out of spite, but out of sovereignty. It creates a rupture in her narrative. Suddenly, you're not predictable. You're not behaving like the other men she's tested. And that silence, it echoes. It starts with confusion. Why hasn't he reached out? Then it grows into doubt. Did I misjudge him? Eventually it becomes anxiety. Is he already gone? And this is where the true reversal begins. Not because you manipulated her, but because you stopped betraying yourself. You stopped responding to her tests, and in doing so, you passed your own. Your silence doesn't scream indifference. It whispers confidence. It tells her you don't live at the mercy of her emotional tides. You are no longer the boy chasing approval. You are the man anchored in self-respect. There's a reason why even in business, negotiations are won by the one most comfortable with silence. Because silence, when held with composure, creates discomfort in the other. It forces them to confront themselves. And in a romantic dynamic where she expected you to prove your worth, your lack of reaction sends a shockwave through her psyche. It says, "You're not the source of my peace." Now she's the one staring at the phone. She's replaying the last time you spoke, scanning for signs that she went too far. She posts a photo with another guy, not out of joy, but to bait your ego. But when you don't comment, don't text, don't even blink, the strategy collapses. She might send a vague message, something that sounds like nothing but smells like bait. "Hey, hope you're doing okay." Most men would leap on it. They'd respond instantly, thinking it's the sign she's come to her senses. But it's not. It's a probe. She's not offering intimacy. She's checking inventory. And here's the crucial difference between the man who stays in the loop and the man who exits it. The former sees her breadcrumb and follows it back into the trap. The latter sees the breadcrumb and recognizes it for what it is, a reminder that she never truly left the game. She just paused it to see if you were still willing to play. But you've stopped playing, not out of bitterness, not to prove a point. You stopped because you've stepped outside the frame entirely. You've realized that true value doesn't require chasing. It emanates. Now, something radical happens. The woman who once withdrew starts questioning herself. Because in her mind, men always follow the script. They panic when she pulls back. They chase harder. They reach for closure. But you rewrote the narrative. You let go. And nothing unsettles the ego more than uncertainty. The unknown is where the mind begins to obsess. Why didn't he reply? Was he never that into me? Did I lose someone who mattered? That's when the pull reverses. That's when she begins to feel the vacuum that your absence created. Because when you no longer need her, she has to decide. Step forward with authenticity, or stay back in pride. And here's where you win. Not because you won her back, but because you didn't need to. There's something quietly terrifying about silence, not just for her, but for anyone who's used attention as a currency. In our digital age, where everyone is drowning in noise and distraction, silence is no longer passive. It's active. It's a message. And the one who can hold it without flinching wields an invisible kind of power. When you go silent, not to manipulate, but to liberate yourself, you interrupt the psychological dance that she's been leading. Suddenly, the rhythm she depended on, test, pull back, wait for a chase, has no music. You're no longer reacting. You're not even on the dance floor. And the human psyche, especially the feminine one attuned to emotional resonance, notices when a note goes missing. Now she's doing what you used to do, watching, waiting, obsessing. Your silence turns the mirror back on her. She begins scrolling through old conversations, decoding your last words. She replays your final interaction, not to remember you, but to find the point where she lost control. Her pride won't let her admit this. She may post more, laugh louder in videos, and appear radiant in group selfies. But make no mistake, behind each curated moment is a question she cannot answer. Why didn't he react? This is when fear begins to grow. Not fear of losing you, but fear that she never really had you. That maybe, just maybe, the validation she thought you craved was an illusion. And that means her power was always fragile. Most women don't admit this. They won't send a long apology. They won't break down in confession. Instead, they test. Quietly, subtly, with plausible deniability. A text that says, "Hey, saw something that reminded me of you." A comment on your story. A like from a profile she hasn't visited in months. But these aren't signals of affection. They're probes. And the question beneath each one is simple. Do I still matter to him? If you take the bait, if you respond with even a fraction of neediness, she knows the answer. You're still available. You're still waiting. You're still under her emotional jurisdiction. And once she confirms this, she no longer needs to chase. Because it was never about reunion. It was about reassurance. This is where most men fail. They mistake curiosity for longing. They confuse checking in with caring. They see breadcrumbs and believe they've found the trail back to her heart. But she never left you a map. She left you a trap. The moment you reply, you reset the game. The control shifts back. She breathes easily again. Not because she missed you, but because she still matters. And then she vanishes. That's why true strength lies not in the response, but in its absence. Because when you refuse to dance to a rhythm designed to test your ego, you teach her something about herself. You force her to sit with her choices, her doubts, her fears. It's in that emotional silence that something begins to erode inside her. Her friends, who once echoed her confidence, begin to second guess. Maybe he moved on, they say. Maybe he's seeing someone else. And now, it's not just her wondering. It's the entire environment around her that shifts from certainty to speculation. This is the power of the unknown. The unknown is unbearable for those who need control. And when you become that, an unknown, unshaken man, you become unforgettable. Because now, she has to reckon with a thought she never planned to face. She may have underestimated you. This realization, once it takes root, doesn't go away quietly. It grows. It changes the way she sees the past. Suddenly, the conversations where she thought she was testing your patience now look like missed opportunities. The silences she thought meant indifference now appear composed. The man she thought she could manipulate now looks mysterious. Maybe even rare. This is where the anima re-enters the picture. From Jung's view, the anima, her internal image of masculinity, wants to be met not with submission, but with presence. She doesn't want a man she can toy with. She wants one who can stand in his fullness, who doesn't collapse under pressure or emotion. And if she sees that in you, after believing you were something else, she becomes conflicted, drawn, confused. And that confusion? It's your leverage. But not for revenge. Not for control. It's your leverage to let go fully. To finally stop looking for closure and become it. So when she sends that second message, longer this time, with more emotion, more subtle cues, you already know the game. She might mention something meaningful. I heard that song we used to play. Or, I was thinking about that weekend we spent at the lake. This isn't a vulnerability. It's bait wrapped in sentiment. And you don't bite. Not because you're bitter, not because you're detached, but because you're done. You've grown beyond the need to be chosen by someone who had to lose you to see you. Because true power isn't in being desired, it's in being disciplined. She may escalate again. She may get angry, flirt with others, and post stories designed to provoke jealousy. But here's where you win. You feel nothing. Because you've transcended the chase. You've become indifferent. Not cold, not cruel, but self-contained. You no longer need her chaos to feel alive. The test is complete. And she failed. Not because she pulled away, but because she expected you to collapse. Now she's not testing anymore. Now she's reaching. And here's where you must decide. If she finally breaks through her pride, if she comes back with real honesty, vulnerability, a sincere apology, are you still available? Maybe. But only if her words match her actions. Only if her effort matches the value you now bring. Only if she is no longer chasing ego, but truth. And maybe by then, you won't even care. She thought she had time. Time to test you. Time to walk away and circle back. Time to play with the distance. She believed that her absence was a leash, one she could tighten or loosen at will. And you? You were supposed to wait. Wait and prove yourself. Wait and hope. Wait and beg. That was the unspoken deal. That was the script she had rehearsed 100 times in her mind with men who came before you. And it always worked. Until now. Because something in you shifted. Not with words. Not with anger. With silence. And that silence isn't passive, it's presence. It's not avoidance. It's evolution. In the old paradigm, your attention was her proof. Your response was her validation. You existed in orbit around her approval. And she never questioned it. Because neither did you. But detachment breaks the loop. It tells a new story. One where your worth no longer depends on being chosen, pursued, or approved of. One where she is no longer the author of your narrative, but a chapter that ended quietly. This is where most men stumble. They think silence is a tactic, a way to punish, to provoke, to flip the game. But true silence isn't about her at all. It's about healing your addiction to her validation. It's about facing the space she used to occupy and not rushing to fill it. It's about learning to breathe without the oxygen of her attention. And make no mistake, She feels the difference. You may think she's unaware. You may imagine she's fine, moving on, unaffected. But the truth is, women are more sensitive to energetic shifts than we admit. When your attention detaches, truly detaches, it leaves a void. And that void doesn't go unnoticed. It haunts. At first, she dismisses it. Maybe she even mocks it. He's just trying to act strong. But time passes. You don't reach out. You don't ask what's wrong. You don't reply to her stories. You don't bite at her vague, ambiguous messages. And slowly, the confidence begins to crack. This is where the anima enters her unconscious, the masculine figure that symbolizes strength, mystery, and inner guidance. Jung believed that when a woman encounters a man who holds his center, it activates something archetypal in her. She senses him not just as a person, but as a force, a mirror, a kind of psychic gravity. Gravity doesn't arise from chasing. It emerges from rootedness, from being still when everything in her is designed to provoke motion. That's why the men who don't react confuse her. They don't fit the narrative. They don't follow the script. And that confusion slowly morphs into obsession. Now, she's the one scrolling through your profile. Not once, not casually, obsessively. She's not just watching your life. She's looking for clues. Clues that she still matters. Clues that she still has access. And when she finds nothing, no new posts, no passive-aggressive quotes, no emotional leaks, she panics. So she tries again. This time it's a message. Hey, I saw something that reminded me of you. Or, hope you're doing okay. Harmless, casual. She sends it to maintain deniability. She needs you to respond, but she needs to pretend she didn't care if you did. But you've outgrown that. You've stepped outside the loop. You no longer respond to breadcrumbs because you're not hungry for her attention anymore. You're not starving for her recognition. And that, right there, is the moment she realizes she might have lost you. Not the version of you she pushed away, the one who would have texted back instantly. That man is gone. What she's lost is far more dangerous. She's lost the man you became in her absence. A man who no longer requires her to feel whole. That's what women regret most. Not losing a man, but losing the version of him that evolved in the silence. Now her tests intensify. She tries a story designed to trigger jealousy. A picture with another man. A memory reposted. An indirect caption. But you don't respond. Not because you're numb, but because you finally understand. If she wanted to be with you, she would be. Real affection doesn't hide behind games. It shows up honestly. And this, whatever she's doing, isn't love. It's ego. She doesn't want you back. She wants back the power of knowing she could have you. But you're not that man anymore. Because during those weeks of silence, you weren't waiting. You were building. You were healing. You stopped asking why she left and started asking why you stayed. You started seeing the parts of you that were afraid of being alone. The parts that confused chaos with connection. That thought love meant suffering. That mistake is what you buried. That illusion is what you burned. And now, you are no longer accessible. This is where she spirals. She goes to her friends, the same ones who told her, he'll be back. The same ones who laughed and said, he's obsessed. But now, they begin to hesitate. Because the longer you remain silent, the more undeniable it becomes. She misjudged you. This doubt corrodes her confidence. She starts scanning for signs in everything. In your silence. In her memories. She remembers how you used to look at her. How did you make her feel safe? She thought she could replace that. But now, she realizes, it wasn't just your attention she lost. It was your presence. That presence isn't something you can fake. It isn't a text or a gesture. It's the energy of a man who is complete, whole, still. It is the rarest kind of man in the modern world. The one who doesn't need anyone to validate him. She might try one final test. This time, it's not subtle. It might be emotional. I miss you. I don't know what happened. Can we talk? And here's the moment of reckoning. Not for her, but for you. Do you respond? Maybe. But only if it's real. If it's rooted in truth. If it's free of pride and manipulation. If she shows you not just with words, but with consistent action, that she sees the man you've become and respects him. But most of the time, you won't. Not because you're cold, but by the time she's ready to love you, you're no longer available. Not to her, not to the past. Because your silence wasn't a test. It was a transformation. She chased a man who no longer exists. And that's the deepest irony. She broke you to see if you'd stay. But in breaking you, she revealed the illusion. And once you saw it, you rebuilt yourself so thoroughly, so silently, that by the time she circled back, there was nothing left to return to. You are untouchable, not because you hurt her, not because you played a game, but because you chose yourself. You stood still. And in doing so, you became the man she will measure all others against. The one who walked away, not in anger, but in truth. Because the true victory isn't getting her back. It's never needed her again.